comes out, they see the police, or we say police, they immediately go back in. And so it was a distraction for sure. But after that, Sarpé closed the door the final time. That, like I said, that was the last I saw of him. The knocking and announcing then continued by Sergeant Mattingly on the door.
Where were you at that time?
I had moved up a little bit. Now there's no threat up here, anybody to challenge to get back in their apartment. And Sergeant Mattingly had taken his advice and disengaged conversation. And then I moved up a little bit from where I was at. So just probably not a couple feet.
And why did you move up?
Well, a couple reasons. Detective Nobles, it was about that time I felt, and it's usually a supervisor or commanding officer's decision when the door should be breached, and that usually we do not have a lieutenant with us. So in my mind, it was the sergeant was waiting on the lieutenant to make the call. Usually it's just a sergeant and detectives there, 98% of the time. But Lieutenant Hoover was on this search warrant with us for whatever reason. And so I think by Sergeant Mattingly continuously knocking, somebody was waiting for a commanding officer's decision to make that call for the door to be breached, or there had been enough time had passed that the door needed to be breached at that point.
And you were still, you said you moved up a little bit, but you were still the last one except Campbell.
Yes, ma'am. I had moved up into the kind of this bunch is the best word I can use to describe it. But now I was closer to Detective Nobles, who was in this area, like I said before, to the right of the door.
And still everybody's up there. Hoover, Cosgrove, James, Nobles, Mattingly, and now you have stepped up a few steps.
Yes, ma'am. They are more in this area. They're more behind Sergeant Mattingly, but still all of us are bunched up in this.
Bunched up.
Yes, ma'am.
And you indicated someone, either Lieutenant Hoover gave the directive to go ahead and breach because there had been no response to the knocking and announcing. Is that why the decision was made to breach the door?
That's my understanding, ma'am, yes.
What happened as the door? Explain how the door was breached.
Sure. Once Lieutenant Hoover, I believe, gave the order to breach the door, Sergeant Mattingly either moved back or to his left a little bit out of the way. Obviously, you cannot be in the way of the ram. Detective Nobles began working on the door, and he then, the best way for me to describe it is that he stood in a position to his left. So as I'm looking at the door would be here, and began hitting the door with the ram.
We have Exhibit 5. This is Exhibit 5 that's been admitted. Address, if you would, Exhibit 5 with the pointer and explain where Detective Nobles was standing when he began to breach the door.
Sure. He was in this area. And then he moved up to work on the door here. So, in this, I think the battery's dead on this. It keeps going off, but he's hitting it from left to right, standing facing. Detective Nobles would be facing apartment 3 at this point.
Permission to approach. Give you another laser pointer.
Thank you.
So, point out again where Detective Nobles was.
Sure. Here, prior to breach, and then he scoots over so he can put force on the door.
And then what happened?
He hit the door 2 times. You can start, it's hard to see in this picture, but you can start to see the door itself start to buckle a bit as he's hitting it with the ram. And I believe on the third swing, that's when the door came off of the strike plate in the handle area and opened just like it is there.
Open just like it is there. Is that what you remember? Or is that what we're seeing? Are you saying that because we're seeing it here in this picture?
I was giving a visual for the jury. Is that how the door opened after he struck it? So in that manner, I'm not saying that's exactly how far it was open. Maybe I misspoke, but that's the way the door opened inward.
Where were you?
At this point, I'm now moved up to here in this area.
And where is Cosgrove, Hoover, James? I'm assuming Campbell is still at the back. Where are Cosgrove, Hoover, and James when the door is breached?
They would have been in this area here. So to my left, let me rephrase. Mattingly, Hoover.
Can we see the pointer?
Sure. Mattingly, Hoover, and this is not in a specific order. We're in this area. Sergeant Mattingly was the one knocking on the door, so he was closest to the door, and everyone else was back here. Detective Cosgrove, I don't remember if he was to my right or my left, but he was somewhere in this area.
Did you see the door open when Nobles performed the last hit on it, which broke the door lock and opened?
Yes,
Did you
ma'am.
see the door open?
Yes, ma'am.
Where were you standing?
Right in this area here.
And where was Cosgrove, James, and Hoover?
I don't remember Cosgrove specifically. I just know Sarge was here in this area, and everybody else would have been in this area.
And what happened when the door was breached?
When the door was breached, Detective Nobles here, like I think's been put in the record, he's unarmed. He then hits the ram the last time, and then he spins away. So coming back towards me, or back towards the stairwell, out of harm's way, from here, reverses out to here. Now I don't know how far he went back, or if he went against that wall.
Well, you were standing there.
I wasn't watching Detective Nobles, ma'am. I was watching that door.
You weren't watching Nobles?
No, ma'am. I was watching the door at that point.
Did you watch him when he breached the door,
I did.
but then you quit watching him?
Yeah, I took my eyes off him. There was no reason to watch Detective Nobles after the door was breached.
What happened when the door was breached?
Then I immediately can see down the right side of this hallway to a dark apartment, a completely pitch black apartment.
Where is Sergeant Mattingly when the door was breached?
I never looked over at Sergeant. I never looked left, or I had no reason to look at the other officers because my attention was now focused down this hallway.
You had been watching Sergeant Mattingly when he was knocking and announcing?
Intermittently, yes. I wasn't concentrating my attention on him because, like I said, I was distracted by Mr. Sarpe.
No, after Mr. Sarpe had gone back into the apartment upstairs, and then attention was directed back to the knocking, and then the decision or the order was given to breach. Detective Nobles then began the banging to the breach. You weren't watching Mattingly?
After the door was breached, no, ma'am.
You don't know what Mattingly did?
No, I didn't have any attention towards any reason to have any attention on Sergeant Mattingly.
When the door was breached, how far open did it swing?
To my best recollection, the door was all the way open. It opened up all the way.
And did you see Mattingly step over the threshold, begin to step into apartment 4 after the door was breached?
I did not.
You did not. Did you know Sergeant Mattingly received gunfire?
I did.
How did you know that?
Well, like I said, the apartment was dark, and it was immediately illuminated by the muzzle flash of a firearm.
But you weren't watching. You don't know where Sergeant Mattingly was. You just said.
That's correct. I never saw Sergeant Mattingly cross the threshold.
So, what did you see after the door, as you said, swung all the way open? You didn't see Sergeant Mattingly stepping in. What did you see?
I saw darkness, and then I immediately saw a large muzzle flash. I could feel the percussion of a gun, percussion from the discharge of a firearm. And with the illumination of the muzzle flash, I could see I now had a backdrop and a visual of a silhouette of a person in a combat shooting stance here, directed with a gun directed at us directly,
Where were you standing?
just to the right of this, or
I would like you to point with the laser pointer where you were standing when you saw this muzzle flash.
sure. I was, as Detective Detective Nobles rotated out with the ram, I moved up into this empty void. There was a large void here created by him swinging this ram back and forth, back and forth. So when he did his job on the door and breached it and moved out, I then moved up to here.
So you were in the threshold.
No, I never got in the threshold, no ma'am. I wasn't up as far.
Doormat,
I'm sorry?
the doormat there?
I was probably near the doormat. I don't know if I stepped on the doormat or I was directly in this area right here.
And you saw the muzzle flash.
Yes, ma'am.
Did you get shot?
No, ma'am.
And did that muzzle, you said when you saw the muzzle flash, and because of the muzzle flash, you were able to see a figure behind the muzzle flash? Is that what you stated?
I don't believe that's how I stated. I said the muzzle flash illuminated the room or the hallway to where I could see the silhouette of a human in a shooting stance.
And did that pose a threat to you?
Yes,
So did you respond to that threat?
I did.
You shot?
I did.
How many times did you shoot there standing on the mat?
Oh, I didn't shoot from the mat, ma'am.
When you saw the muzzle flash and the figure, you said, after the flash illuminated the hallway, did that appear to be an active threat to you,
Yes, ma'am.
firing in your direction,
Yes, ma'am.
and you did not return fire?
No, ma'am.
Why not?
Because we were in this fatal funnel.
What did you do?
From my position here, when I saw the threat, I immediately reversed direction, spun out, and went back the breezeway towards the direction that we came from, towards the sidewalk.
Let me go back to Exhibit 19. You went in which direction from this,
Back to where we came from.
from the doormat?
This way. So from here, here.
And then what did you do?
I made this corner of the building because I knew I had to respond, and I couldn't do it from the fatal funnel. And as I moved around,
You knew you had to respond, but you didn't respond. While seeing the direct threat right in front of you, you couldn't respond, or didn't respond. The
Like-
active threat.
like I said, I didn't respond because we were in that funnel.
So you turned around, came out of the breezeway, and what did you do?
I made this corner here, and I think it's off the picture. If you have a wider picture I can use, but I made this turn here towards, I forget which direction that is, but back towards the way in which I came from or I parked at.
So you came out toward the sidewalk then? Is that your testimony?
Yes, ma'am.
What did you do then?
As I made the corner of the building, I had, like I stated before, I had heard the shooting, and then I heard this gunfire intensify to where it would be like a semi-automatic rifle-style sounds. Loud percussion coming out of that breezeway, and like a
We can look up now at Exhibit 33, please. And now point out where you, as you came out the breezeway, where you went.
I came out of the breezeway and to this direction. So I don't know if I used this wheelchair ramp or if I made it to the actual sidewalk. I'm not sure of my exact placement.
Well, where were you when you started shooting through the sliding glass doors?
I was somewhere in this area.
Were you on, those are two different sidewalks. The sidewalk adjacent to the railing, were you there or were you over by the cars that were pulled in, the parking lot there?
Like I said, I don't recall if I was actually on this ramp, this wheelchair ramp, or if I was in this sidewalk area.
And what did you do?
I noticed, I observed, I heard the audible, the semi-automatic gunfire that sounded like rifle fire. I saw the sliding glass door lighting up, illuminating with the muzzle flashes. As I heard the gun go off, I could see the muzzle flash illumination or the strobing of that sliding glass door, of the curtains and blinds from that area.
You said curtains and blinds. Now, had you been inside the apartment 4?
I had not.
And how did you know there were curtains and blinds?
Because I saw the pictures and entered into discovery.
I'm talking about the night this happened, on March 13th.
Okay.
What did you see through the sliding glass doors as you were shooting through them?
I could see these, I believe they're vertical blinds.
So you saw vertical blinds.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, when you approached that apartment back at the initial approach, when you walked down the sidewalk to make entrance into the breezeway, you had taken note of those sliding doors, didn't you?
I recognize them because anytime we walk past a target location, you want to keep your eye or give it your attention to whatever windows or doors are in play at that target location. So I looked over there, I guess, maybe briefly, and identified no threats at those.
And there was no activity, you indicated. You couldn't see anything.
Not to my knowledge.
So you came out here and you were standing somewhere out in here and you were shooting through the sliding glass doors. How many times did you shoot through those?
How many times do I think I shot through them that night, or how many times did I learn that I shot through them?
How many times did you intend to shoot through the doors?
I shot through the doors 5 times from here.
At this time, where was your fellow officers? Mattingly, Nobles, Hoover, James, Cosgrove, and Campbell?
To the best of my knowledge, now I didn't give any attention back or look back. Now I'm out of view of the rest of my platoon. So I can hear John say I'm down or I'm hit, and I know he's down. I see the other or hear the other officers attempting to help him. It almost sounds like material dragging across the ground is what I could hear after he says I'm down, the firing, and it sounds like a commotion, like they're stuck, like they're trying to drag him out. This happened in a second or two, 3 seconds. So that was my perception at the time, that they are now taking automatic gunfire where they're stuck in this fatal funnel with Sergeant Mattingly down. And that's my characterization of what was taking place as I'm returning fire with my only option to return fire through this window to stop this threat inside.
What were you aiming at?
The threat. The strobing.
The threat you had seen when you were standing on the doormat and saw the figure at the end of the hallway? And what kind of gun did you say that you thought that was?
It appeared to be, at the time, it appeared to be a shoulder holstered long rifle, or an AR-15
So
style.
that's what you labeled as the active threat.
Yes, ma'am.
But you didn't shoot at the active threat until you got around to the parking lot.
I was never in the parking lot, ma'am.
Shot through the sliding glass doors,
Yes, ma'am.
aiming at that threat you had seen at the end of the hallway.
Well, the threat that I saw at the end of the hallway, now I see a bright strobing illumination of these, and I can hear the rapid gunfire coming out of this breezeway. And it's my understanding at that time that they were taking that rapid rifle fire down in the hallway and they were being executed.
Did your fellow officers return fire who were in the vestibule, in the foyer? Did your fellow officers return fire?
Did I know that now or do I know that then?
At the time you were there, did your fellow officers return fire?
I found out later they did.
So you saw the muzzle flash at the end of the hall and you did not return fire, and you don't know if your fellow officers returned fire.
I could hear guns going back and forth. I could only assume they were, but I did not know for a fact that they shot while I was here.
You assume that they were returning fire?
I could hear, it sounded like, ma'am, different calibers being exchanged, and then that, like I said before, that automatic rifle, or a semi-automatic rifle fire.
So you thought you heard different guns going back and forth
It sounded like a
while
fire.
you were standing outside the sliding glass door?
Yes, ma'am, it sounded like a firefight.
Well, were you concerned that if you shot through the sliding door, you might hit one of your fellow officers?
Absolutely not.
Did you feel guilty running out of the breezeway, leaving your fellow officers in the fatal funnel?
I did not.
They stayed in the breezeway and you left.
That's my understanding.
After firing your shots through the sliding door, what did you do?
After shooting those rounds through the sliding glass door, the firing did not stop. It continued. I noticed the 2 bedroom windows, which I know to be bedroom windows now, the 2 windows immediately adjacent to the sliding glass door, were also being illuminated with that strobing muzzle flash. I could hear the gunfire coming out of the hallway, and I could see those I could see the illumination from the strobing, the muzzle flash lighting those windows up. I recalling where I had saw the shooter last prior to moving. I knew that I had a more accurate shot at that threat at the end of the hallway if in fact I delivered rounds through that bedroom, as it's referred to now, bedroom 2 window.
Where were you when you shot through the bedroom window? And this is Exhibit 32, now up on the screen. Where were you standing when you shot through the bedroom window?
Ma'am, I don't know if it's in this frame because I can't tell how far this is away from the door, but it would have been somewhere in here, whether it be the sidewalk or that area.
Exhibit 31. now shows both the sliding glass door and the window. Point out where you moved from having shot through the sliding door up here. Where were you standing when you shot through the bedroom window?
I would have moved after I delivered these rounds through the sliding window with no result on the threat. I then continued to my right, or closest, I guess, to this truck bumper, and returned fire through bedroom 2 window.
And is it your testimony that you saw an active threat through the bedroom window?
Yes, ma'am. Like I just stated, I had a bright illumination still from these windows. Could hear the
I
gunfire.
can't see where you're pointing.
I'm sorry. Through the bedroom window, lighting up, the flashing, the strobing, and I knew my threat when I first observed it was, and it's hard to show here, but would be right there in that hallway.
With the AR
Positioned in a combat shooting stance, yes.
at the end of the hallway.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you know how many shots did you intend to shoot through the bedroom window?
5 rounds.
What did you do then?
After putting those 5 rounds through the window, through bedroom 2 window, I stopped to assess, and the threat was stopped. The threat had stopped. No more firing could be heard or seen, or the strobing of the muzzle flash could be seen.
Stop to assess. Did you stop to assess after your first round through the bedroom window?
Yes, ma'am. That assessment would have been made from where I shot first to where I shot the second.
So after every shot through the bedroom window, you assessed and you still saw an active threat?
I didn't say that. No.
What did you say?
I said after 5 rounds, I assessed those rounds through that bedroom window, and I noticed I could tell there was no further threat. I stopped shooting.
So you did not assess whether there was still an active threat after your first shot through the bedroom window?
No, because I was still getting that stimulus from that bedroom window, and from the audible coming from the breezeway.
And the audible what?
Gunshots
From where?
from coming out into the breezeway area.
So you were seeing a threat, active threat, through the bedroom window, but you were hearing gunfire in the breezeway.
Well, like I tried to explain, maybe I did a poor job. I could see the illumination strobing in the bedroom window, and I could hear the gunfire, which matched that strobing.
From the breezeway. What happened then?
The threat had stopped, and I believe I moved back possibly to a cover type position. I did not know at that time how many shots I'd fired, and I thought it was probably appropriate to do a tactical reload.
In the parking lot.
Yes, ma'am.
So you reloaded, and then what happened?
I could hear out in the parking lot, we've seen pictures, I could hear, I guess we skipped a part, ma'am, but after the shooting here, I could to my left, and I never looked back left, but I could hear some type of commotion over here. It sounded like grown men wrestling on the ground with clothes on is what it sounded like. And I didn't know exactly what happened, but there was no sparring verbally or anything to go along with that. I did not take my eyes off of that, of the threat. But I could hear a commotion, like people were on the ground wrestling, but I could hear voices of people that I recognized that were there. I believe Tony James or Lieutenant Hoover said, I have a tourniquet or we need a tourniquet. So I knew there was, I knew Sergeant Mattingly was, I knew he'd been hit, and I knew he's bleeding, and I knew they needed a tourniquet. I could hear that going on in the parking lot. Now, I'm alone. Everybody else's efforts are to save Sergeant Mattingly's life, and I'm kind of there by myself. So I get on the radio.
When you left the breezeway, did you look back? When you left the breezeway and left them in the fatal funnel, did you look back?
No.
Well, at some point you learn Mattingly has been shot. You, then as you say, hear this scuffling around, people tending. You find out everyone is tending to Mattingly.
If I could be a little more specific.
You've got,
about that.
you answered my question.
Okay, thank you.
You got on the radio then and called for, radio that an officer was down and called for backup or called for patrol.
I switched to the primary channel. Our channels aren't our narcotics channels are not monitored by patrol, nor are they recorded. So I got on a primary channel that has a dispatcher actually listening. Our channels, our narcotics channels, don't have a dispatcher. We can't talk to someone and say, hey, come help us. There's nobody listening. It's just for us to communicate with each other. So I switched my radio to a primary channel, be it the wrong one. I still got to a primary channel, which was the downtown channel, and put out the 1030 officer needs assistance. The dispatcher immediately responded to me, what is your location? They did not know where, for some reason, they did not know where we were at. Usually that's done in the briefing, or the case officer will notify Metro Safe of our location of the warrant, so they'll know where we're at in case something like this happens, but that didn't happen in this case. They had no idea where I was at, so they asked for a location. I couldn't give them one because I didn't know the address. Got my phone out and remembered the whiteboard picture I'd taken previously at CID office and got it bigger and zoomed in, and it appeared to be 3007 Springfield. And that's the address I called out on the 1030. While doing so, I said, I want responding officers to come with long rifle. We're engaged, or we were met with rifle fire. I need patrol officers with rifles to respond. Because not all patrol officers have rifles. That's
You specifically told them to get the patrol to bring long rifles.
Yes, ma'am.
And that's why they all showed up with long rifles. And then when they got there, you told the patrol where to go to cover. And did you send them to the back of the building?
I don't recall sending anybody to the back. I did mention that we needed somebody. I believe at some point in my radio transmission, I advised somebody needed to be back there. And like I said before, I was worried that the person was going out the back window or the back door, and we had nobody. I know we had nobody back there because everyone that showed up at the stack, usually we'll have two officers or two detectives peel off and go around and cover the back, and we didn't do that on this warrant.
Well, how did you know there was a back door?
I did not know there was a back door. I just assumed there was a back window or a back door. That's what I was afraid. The subject, the shooter, was escaping out that direction.
You stayed out in front of this building as patrol arrived and began to point their long rifles at both the front and the back. You were out there for quite a while. In fact, then when, you later found out, Kenneth Walker came out, and you were initially the one directing him, weren't you?
Yes, ma'am.
So you were out there. After you called for on radio, and before Kenneth Walker came out, you were out still in the front watching this entrance and these windows and this sliding door that you had shot through, correct?
Yes, ma'am. I actually put my light on one of these vehicles right here, on the hood or trunk of the vehicle parked here, and left it there so we could light up the target location. So when officers responded, they just didn't run up into this active shooting situation.
Because that's before SWAT got there.
Yes, ma'am.
And so the door to apartment 4 was still open.
Ma'am, I never went back into the breezeway, so I couldn't say whether it is or wasn't.
You were in the parking lot?
Yes, ma'am, I'm now behind a position of cover. Because like I stated, I'm worried for my personal safety because I have a handgun, and it's my understanding the shooter has a long rifle. And I needed to get some type of cover between me and the shooter. Had that person emerge from the complex, I would have at least a vehicle engine or something to have behind cover to return.
Well, the door to apartment 4 was still open. So if you were worried about a shooter still being in there, you would have obviously been wanting to watch the door, the front door, would you not?
Yes, ma'am, and that's why I positioned the patrol officers on cars, hoods, and trunks in this area and had them direct their rifle barrels towards the target location. I was trying my best to stay behind cover, but as they came in hot or running on foot at 10:30, everybody's pretty hyped up. I want them to know what's in play here. I didn't want them pointing weapons at apartments that were not in play, meaning, upstairs apartment or this or that apartment. I wanted them to know exactly what was in play as it was.
And did you see a man come out of this door here and start to walk out and toward the open door of apartment 4, who we now know was Cody Etherton?
I did not, ma'am.
Did not see.
I was over here in this parking lot.
So during the entire time after you shot into this sliding door, after you shot into the window, and then were out there calling for patrol and were directing patrol where to point their guns, you didn't see Cody Etherton come out of apartment 3, this door here.
No, ma'am, but a patrol officer over here behind cover could have seen. I was straight more in front of the bedroom 2 in this area where I had reloaded.
So during the time that you were in the vestibule, let's go back to the approach to the beginning. There is some ambient light in this vestibule, wasn't there? Wasn't completely dark, was it?
Ma'am, it was not pitch black, but I believe, to the best of my knowledge, there was some type of parking lot illumination back behind us, and I believe that may have fed a little bit of light into that dark. Well, you can see it's dark during daylight in this picture, but it's even darker at night, even with the parking lot lights on. As you can see, there's no lighting as it is inside this vestibule.
It's a very small vestibule.
Yes, ma'am, it is.
Not really enough room for 6 men to stand in there, minus Campbell, is there?
I don't agree with that. We all fit in there.
And while you're in there in that very small vestibule, before entry was made, before any breach was made, did you not see this door here with a big 3 on it?
No, ma'am. As I said before, there were detectives standing in here. Lieutenant Hoover himself is 6'7", 250, 80 pounds. He's a large guy. Detective James is carrying a barricade shield, which takes up the space of an extra person. So that is at least 2 large figures between me and seeing any such doors here. Nor do I have any reason to be searching around for extra doors because my attention is focused on apartment 4 until Sarpay comes out of apartment 8 upstairs.
And when you walked up, before anybody ever even went in there, you didn't see right across from this patio here, you saw this one, didn't you?
I could see 2 balconies and 2 patios.
So you knew there was a door on this side, directly across from apartment 4.
I didn't see it, but I can only assume there would be.
Where were you standing when you were directing, who you later found out was Kenneth Walker? Where were you standing when you were directing him out?
When we had sufficient cars, where I felt it was sufficient to do a call out, I obviously just explained I didn't want to do that by myself for obvious reasons, safety concerns, but when we had appropriate patrol there, in position, behind cover, with long rifles, that's when I felt it was safe to make a call out of the person inside. And I don't think I answered your question, now that I went.
Put up exhibit.
I would have been straight out in the parking lot from that area.
So directing your attention to now what's up on the screen, Exhibit 1, photograph that was taken that night. Where were you standing when you were directing Kenneth Walker to come out?
The best of my recollection, I was somewhere in here.
And how does he come out? Where does he walk?
He comes out at 4 and into this breezeway.
And did you have a light on him? You said you put the light on a vehicle there?
Yeah, the light that I left my Stinger, I believe on one of these cars here, the trunk of one of these cars here. Ma'am, I don't recall if I had my light on him when he exited the apartment or not. I don't recall that. I would refer that to
Wouldn't it,
body cam footage.
wouldn't it have been important for you to have a light on him, be able to see him as you were directing him out?
Yes, ma'am. It'd be important for him to be illuminated, and I'm not saying he wasn't, but it could have been by other officers.
And he came out of apartment 4, the door, and you were paying close attention to him as he exited that door, weren't you?
Yes, ma'am.
So at that time, as he exited the door to apartment 4, did you not see this door directly within a couple feet to the left of apartment 4 with a big 3 on it?
No, ma'am. My attention was directed towards Mr. Walker himself.
Okay. Louisville Metro Police does not teach suppressive fire, does it?
Not to my knowledge, ma'am.
That's all the questions I have.
Any questions on redirect?
I have a couple redirects. Brett, Ms. Whaley asked you about the breezeway after the shooting. She said you left your fellow officers in the breezeway and you left. Can you explain to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury why you left that breezeway?
I removed myself as quickly as possible so I could move to a location where I could actively or accurately return fire and stop that threat to my fellow detectives that were being shot at in the hallway.
And then you said that you fired 5 shots through the sliding glass door, 5 shots through the bedroom window. And you said you intended to fire 5 shots. Did you know you were firing 5 shots?
I did not count that, no, sir.
Okay, when you say you intended to fire 5 shots, is that because you later learned that's what you fired and you intended to fire every shot that you did fire?
That's accurate.
You weren't counting?
No, sir.
Correct. Thank you. I have nothing further.
Anything else?
No, nothing wrong.
You can step down.
Thank you, Judge.
Your next witness?
Sorry?
Your next witness?
Oh, we rest.
All right, thank you. All right, counsel, would you approach the bench, please? All right, ladies and gentlemen, you have heard all the evidence that you are going to hear in this case, and so we are going to recess for the day. The attorneys and I will stay here. We'll work on the instructions that will be given to you tomorrow morning prior to the closing arguments that will be made, and you will deliberate the case tomorrow. As I mentioned yesterday, you might want to make any arrangements that you need to make just in case you're here longer than what you're normally here during our trial. Please remember the separation admonition and don't do any independent investigation nor discuss the case with anyone. Please avoid all media accounts of the trial. I will see you back here tomorrow morning at 9:30.